these guys right here are dominant out on the tournament trail, and we're going to, talk a little bit about some of our favorite techniques and things like that. We've got a mic over here if you want to hit us with some questions. You can just line up there, and we'll answer your questions. You can direct them towards the whole group or any individual angler here. But if you look at the resume of this group standing here on the stage, there's a lot of dollars in earnings, a lot of championships, a lot of trophies.
Right there.
No. It's a really great group of guys. I compete against these guys. I have a lot of them for a long time, except for Bertrand. He's the young guy in the group, but he's a silent, sneaky killer. So he's a West Coast guy, kind of like Skeet. They're a little bit different. They got a little different hair. They got a little different attitude. They talk a little bit funny, but they're excellent finesse fishermen.
Skeet doesn't know anything less than 20-pound test.
Yeah, Skeet never throws less than 20 pound, but no. Anyways, great group of guys here. We want to, give you an informative seminar. Finally, the weather's turned. It's springtime right now, and a lot of these fish and a lot of areas are pre-spawn and they're staging. We're going to be moving up. We're going to be fishing for spawning fish real soon. So, again, we've got a mic over here on the side if you want to have some questions. But I'm going to get this thing kicked off right off the get-go because I want to learn from these guys as well. Again, the knowledge that's sitting here on the stage is pretty dang special. We had a great event last week at Red Crest, and unfortunately, I didn't make it till the end. But there's one guy up here, my Nitro teammate, Edwin Evers, right here, that did. And one of the things that's really challenging when you got conditions like we've had the last few days is to be able to keep up with those fish. And one of the biggest asked questions we have right now is electronics, right? People want to know more about electronics, and the thing that I think that has changed more than anything is forward-facing sonar, right? You're seeing all these companies, Edwin uses Lowrance, which they have active target. I use Humminbird, which they have Mega Live. Josh, your Garmin, that they have the live scope as well. We're all using this forward-facing sonar, but Edwin, tell me how it has just changed the way you fish and some of your favorite techniques for it.
Great question. It is completely changed the way I fish because now I feel like I'm not fishing. I used to try to fish as fast as Kevin. Kevin used to cover a lot of water. Now I'm seeing all these fish out in front of my boat, and it just, like for me on that final day, it got really, really frustrating not to be able to get those fish to bite. The biggest thing that I've noticed from, looking at this forward-looking sonar is the depth that fish are relating, especially this time of the year. These fish are really coming up high in the water column. At Lake Fork earlier this year, I cast it over this stump that I saw this fish sitting next to 2-3 times, and my bait, I was throwing a half-pound spinnerbait, and it just kept going beneath it. And I finally held my rod up really high, and bam, I caught this 3-pound bass. And it's just really opening my eyes to the depth that my bait's running in comparison to where those fish are sitting. And it's really not as hard as a lot of people make it out to be. It's pretty simple technology once you get used to it. Just get it out there, get it on your boat, and give it a try because it will really help, put some more fish in the boat, help you be more productive, and that's what we all want to do is be more productive on the water.
Well, the thing, if you have not seen any of this forward-facing sonar, imagine having a flashlight on the front of your boat, and that's kind of how it works. Is it actually shines a beam out, and anything that's in that crosses in that beam is going to show up on your screen. So you actually see that fish, and it has to be pretty centralized. So we actually just turn the trolling motor left or right and keep moving back and forth. And if you see something that breaks that beam, it shows up on the screen, then you can really dial it in, and then you see it as it moves, so you can follow it. So if a bass is swimming along, you can actually follow it. You can see your bait, and you know the exact depth, distance, and direction to make a cast. And not only that, but what can you do if you throw a jerk bait out there and you see one, and he starts following it, you know what you need to do. You can trigger him.
I mean, you can make him trigger to bite. You can stop it, start it, get it going, and it's not only for bass fishing. Obviously, all of us up here are bass fishermen back home in Oklahoma. It's huge for crappie fishing. It's huge for spoonbill fishing. People are using it for cat fishing. There's so many other things that we can use it for just other than bass fishing.
Yep. So, again, we've got a mic over here on the side. If you got a question, you can line up there. We'd love to do it. But I've got one because There's one guy up here on the stage that did something really, really special earlier this season, and he did it live on camera. He caught one of the biggest bass, probably the biggest bass that I've ever seen in a tournament competition. So, Randy Howell, I want you to tell us what that particular story. It's been all over social media. You definitely want to see this video because it's pretty incredible.
How big was it?
Everybody loves a big fish story.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I fished almost 30 years professionally, and that's what's so cool about bass fishing. All the years I've fished, I caught the biggest bass I had ever caught up till that day was 10 pounds, 8 ounces. So I catch a 10-11 in the tournament on the knockout round. That's the biggest I ever caught, set my record, set their tour record, and then the very next day, I catch, after 5 hours of not getting a bite, boom, I catch a 12-pound, 14-ouncer, just flipping in the bushes. So that's what fishing is all about, and that's why we all do it, the passion of catching a big bass. That's what we love. You forget about all those other 5 hours, all those other 1,000 flips I made in the bushes that day that I didn't get a bite. When you get that one bite, and that's why you got to always be ready. And, man, it was the best deal ever that had happened in the final round of the tournament when we had a live stream camera. How many of y'all watch us on Bass Pro Tour, Major League Fishing on that live stream? How many of y'all get in trouble at work because you watch it all day? How about at school?
We appreciate you doing that.
That's right. Sure. It's the most addicting, most fun thing in the world to watch. And so when you get you got to see the excitement. These guys have really busted my chops over how high pitched my voice was in that video, because I sounded like a 12-year-old girl for like a whole 5 minutes, because that's what we do it for, the excitement of catching a big bass. And that's why you never know what you're going to catch when you go out. That's why you got to always try and always be ready. And, man, it was a blessing to get it that day. That's probably the only title that Jacob Wheeler and VanDam didn't have already. And so it's good to finally have a little feather in my hat. Now it gives them guys a motivation to try to break that record too, like they always do.
Hang on now. I think we got a question here from the audience over here. You got a question for us? Okay, speak up and give us your question.
How do you make the fish come towards you?
How do you make the fish?
That's a good one.
That's a really good question, and I got a really good answer for that. But I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I knew Skeet would do something crazy like that. No, to be honest with you, one of the things that I use, and we have a lot of different electronics, is I actually have a unit called a hydrowave, and it's a little unit that's got a speaker that mounts on your trolling motor, and it imitates the sounds of bass and bait fish and other bass attacking those bait fish. So a lot of times you can actually activate, if you're in an area around some fish with that hydrowave running, I can play a sound of, again, shad sounds or bluegills or whatever I think the forage is in that area. And with this new live sonar, what I have learned is that I'm calling a lot more fish than I ever realized I was before, because now I can see them with it. It's almost like having X-ray vision around the boat, but that hydrowave makes those sounds of bait fish and bass intimidate them, and it'll actually attract them. And a lot of times if I'm fishing and catching those fish, I can keep them biting. I can keep them excited. They're very competitive. Bass are very competitive by nature. So when they hear another bass attacking bait fish, they know they've got a good opportunity to find some of those shad or bluegill or whatever the bait fish are in that area, and they'll actually chase them down. So that's a really good question. Thank you.
It says here, fishy, fishy, fishy.
Yeah.
That's what it's saying.
It's a fish call.
And it works. I've got the one on my boat that says KVD on it, and that's the one you want, because that's the one that's going to call the most fish in. And when I called that 12-14, I had that thing playing at 3/4 volume. I was blaring them because they weren't biting, and I'm like, I'm gonna bring them in or I'm gonna run them away one. And I had that thing turned up loud on the delayed schooling pattern. I love that delayed schooling pattn, man.
That's one of my favorite patterns as well.
Yeah, that's how I learned that.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you didn't know is you guys are going to get a special treat today. This is something that's never happened before. So we're talking about electronics, and we have a couple participants that are going to help you understand this forward-facing sonar. So the way I understand it, Kevin VanDam and Edwin Evers, they're going to get out here in the water, swim around, and we're going to put the Lowrance Ghost down here and let you see what they look like swimming in the water on the big screen. Does that sound good to everybody?
Doesn't sound like much fun to me.
No.
That water's cold.
It's like, no.
Yesterday morning, that was an ice skating rink here, not a casting pond. So we got another question here from the audience.
Who's caught the biggest fish in the group and how big?
Who's caught the biggest
fish in the group and how big? So we know already that Randy Howell has caught a 12-14, and he did it live on camera. It was incredible.
Skeet, can you beat it?
He's got me because my biggest bass ever was just a 12-pounder, which I was really proud of, but it was not a 12-14.
I'm a 12 even, but I got a 1,000-pound bluefin tuna. That's my biggest one ever.
Yeah.
No, that's a fish.
Skeet just won up to him. Bertrand.
I got a 12-pounder also. I caught it when I was a little kid on a topwater, and what's funny is it was like almost Christmas time in Arizona. Way too late to be throwing topwater. I didn't know any better, and I caught the biggest bass of my life. Wow. Ever since, I know not to throw topwater on Christmas, but I've never caught another 12-pounder. So.
Wow. That's good. David?
Yeah, 12-2. That's the largest fish I ever caught, and I caught it in competition back when we were at Lake Toho when Dean Rojas set the all-time record there. That day before, I had 11-pounder, which was my biggest fish ever. The next day, I caught a 12-2. Yeah, it was one of those events where, like Randy was talking about, you just never know what's going to happen when you're out there on the water. And sometimes the stars line up and you catch your biggest fish ever, and you always remember that fish. You remember everything about that day and that bite, that fish you caught. So every time you go out there, just be aware it could happen. Next time it could be the next one.
Edwin, are you going to one-up us all? I got a feeling.
Can I say how big my son's is? Because that's the only way I can compare with you guys. My son caught a 12-1 last year. Does that count?
Yeah.
My biggest is only a
No.
10-9, so I'm obviously a low man on totem pole up here. My son did catch a 12-1.
That was a good video.
So Randy Howell topped us all with that 12-14.
Yep.
Can I tell a quick story, though?
Yeah,
Hey,
tell
all
it.
right. So over there at the there's a booth over there. It's got Ethel, the original, like 17-pounder. So when I was 16 years old, I cut school. Sorry, mom and dad and anybody. Anyways, it was a Saturday, actually, really. And I was walking a lake in Spring Lake, Northern California. I had a little spinning rod, 8-pound test, and a little weightless worm. I threw it underneath the willow tree. There's a school of 4-pounders swimming up to it. They all got out of the way, and here comes Shamu. That to this day, it's the size of Ethel. It's a 15 to 17-pound fish. I watched it eat my little worm. I set the hook, and it just went zzz out to the middle of the lake until it spooled me. And to this day, I still cry in my sleep over that fish that night. I just had to share that with you.
That's a sad story.
If you have not been into the Wonders of Wildlife Museum, man, there is an unbelievable aquarium where you can see a bunch of fish that are way bigger than anything that any of us have ever caught. Right at the entrance to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. The museum is an incredible thing to go through anyways. The aquarium, a lot of awesome displays and a lot of big fish in there. But that one Lunker Lake there at the entrance to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, it just, every time I walk by there and every time I see that, I'm just blown away by the size of those bass there. Yep. I wish I could fish in that lake.
Me too. You know a guy, though, right?
I do know a guy, but that lake there is off limits. Right? Yeah. I'd get fired if I fished in that lake right there. So, but we have more questions in the audience yet there. Again, we got a mic over here to the side if you do, and we've had a little bit of fun talking about big fish and things like that, but really, this time of the year, we're all getting pretty excited to get out there and fish. And one of the key baits as these fish start to spawn, especially in these Missouri lakes around here, and they're getting a bloom, and we're starting to see a lot of slime on the bottom and stuff. So to me, one of my favorite techniques, if you got to have a finesse technique and be able to fish for bass as they start to think about spawning. And down here, we got largemouth, smallmouth, and spots in places like Table Rock and Bull Shoals, is a drop shot. And arguably on this stage right here, the guy that's probably the best drop shot angler there is the Arizona guy on the end.
No doubt.
So,
Hail to Josh.
So, Josh, give some of your key, how you like to rig it, some of the baits you like to throw on it and that, because a drop shot is something that every bass angler, even if you're a power fisherman like myself, I've always got one tied on, always on the deck of the boat. And to me, again, after watching you for the last 4 or 5 years with a drop shot and the damage you've done, you're one of the best in the business with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kevin. It's for a lot of folks, they say, hey, topwater's my favorite way to catch fish, flipping's my favorite way. For me, it's a drop shot rig. And a lot of these lakes around here really set up well for drop shotting. I mean, these guys, they know it works kind of everywhere you go. You might do it a little bit differently here and there, but if I had a couple quick tips, if you've never drop shotted, or even if you've drop shotted and thought, man, some guys seem to have a little more success. the most important thing to me is I use a little shorter leader than I think a lot of other people. You know, a lot of times you're fishing for fish that are close to the bottom. They're fish that are sitting on the bottom. So it doesn't make sense to me to have a 2 or 3 foot leader and make those fish swim up 2 or 3 feet to come up and eat your bait. So the first, quickest, easiest thing you can do is just cut that leader in half and make it a 6 to a 10-inch leader. It's a little different when we're fishing for those big smallies and the water's really clear. It's a little different situation, but if you're, largemouth fishing, spotted bass fishing, or even some of the smallmouth and table rock, a shorter leader really helps you a lot. Have any of you guys used a short leader like that?
I will now.
Oh, I know. You got to definitely shorten your leader up. So we got another question here from the crowd. And again, we appreciate everybody coming out to the World's Fishing Fair, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Bass Pro Shops. It's something that as a little kid, man, I always loved Bass Pro Shops, and I always wanted to come here. The first time I came to the Springfield Bass Pro store was in the early 90s. I was here for the World's Fishing Fair in 92, so thanks for coming out. Let's have your question.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks to everybody else. So, as we all know, there's a lot of money being raised right now for conservation. And so what I wanted to kind of direct towards you guys is, what do we need to do as a community to make sure that we're preserving these resources for the next generations? What are some of the best things that we can do to increase the conservation of the fish?
Great question.
That's a great question.
Great.
And here at Bass Pro Shops, it's in their DNA. Our founder, Johnny Morris, he's the greatest conservationist since Teddy Roosevelt. You can see a lot of the things that he's done. He's committed to it. And just by buying your fishing license, every angler is helping conservation. Just by buying fishing tackle, some of that money that's taxed on all outdoor fishing products goes towards conservation. But on a local level, we can all do a lot of different things. So I have my own foundation. We've done a lot. Last week at Red Crest, we did a grant every day, a stocking program, a habitat program. I know a lot of these guys have cleaned up. But the reality of it is the Corps of Engineers has the majority of the water in the country, right? They control those lakes, and they're not building more of them. So it's so critical and so important to take care of the fisheries and the water that we have. We want to have clean water, and that is something that's really important to me. I've got younger boys that are, in their 20s. These guys got a lot of younger kids and stuff like that. We want to make sure it's better for the next generation, and we can all be an advocate for that. So I know, Skeet, you had something you definitely wanted to say along that lines as well. It's so important to leave these places better than we found them, and that's something that we try to do.
Absolutely. So everybody here, we're all here because we have a love and appreciation for the outdoors. And to me right now, the biggest thing is teaching our youth right now that a lot of these kids are wanting to sit home and play on their phones. They don't have the love and the appreciation for the outdoors that a lot of us do right now. But just by taking that youth out there on the water and letting them catch a fish for the first time or whatever it is in the outdoors, give that kid the appreciation, the love, the respect for what we love out here as a group. Because if we don't teach them now, who's going to be in charge of making the decisions to save our water resources, build more dams, to protect our fisheries and our wildlife 50 years from now? So make sure that you are there, that every one of us can make an impact in the youth movement to be able to educate them for the future. So I'm all about water habitat, creating natural resources, grasses. There's too many fisheries around the country where they're eradicating grass and they're killing the greatest resource they have in the fisheries. So protect the grass and teach our youth to love and appreciate the outdoors.
Yeah, and taking care of the fish, the fish that we catch, the way we handle them, the way we take care of them, because that fish right there, a 3-pounder doesn't become a 4-pounder unless you turn it loose after you catch it and let it grow up again. And taking care of the fish that we have now is really as important as the fish in the future as well.
If you're going to keep one, let's keep a smaller fish. Let those bigger fish go. And then on another note, support these concerts that are happening every night. 50% of all the proceeds, for these concerts tonight and tomorrow night, that's all going right back here into conservation and wildlife. And it's just a great, great cause that all of us, just to know that we can go to that concert, enjoy a great night with our family, and half of that proceeds is all going into conservation.
Yeah, last night I went to the Luke Combs concert. Anybody go to the Luke Combs concert last night? Wow, what a great show. So tonight, it's Luke Bryan and Chris Jansen and Dirk Bentley. And again, 50% of all those ticket sales are going right back to conservation. So the first World's Fishing Fair in 1988, they raised $100,000. Bass Pro Shops did for conservation back then. I can promise you through this weekend here that it's going to be a much bigger number for it. And that's all due to the commitment that Johnny Morris has. He is passionate about the outdoors and fishing. Obviously, you know, they provide a great value to their customers, and we sell a lot of products. But they're the only retailer that is so committed and gives so much back to the sport that we love, to the outdoors in general, to all different projects all over the country. They've got conservation projects they're working on down in the Everglades right now, to the ocean, to inland fisheries. You know, they've got groundbreaking research projects and habitat projects that they've done here on Table Rock that are models for wildlife biologists and state fisheries all over the country. So it's a great way to lead by example, and that's what Johnny Morris has done and continues to do. Thank you.
Great question. Anybody else got questions?
We got more.
Anybody over here, you can feel free to come over.
We got another question right here, right there at the...
What is the best time to fish?
What is the best time to fish? I think that's a pretty easy one right there. Edwin, you want to take that one?
The best time to fish is any day that ends in Y. I mean, it's
Amen.
There's no better day. So every day is a great time to fish. No, but if you had to choose it down just to a smaller window, obviously early morning, low light conditions, you know, late evening, you know, they're in clear water situations. But that's not to say on a day like today when the sun's out in more of a stained water situation, I would want to go in the afternoon like on a warm day like this because those fish are cold-blooded and they want to warm up. Great question, bud.
So I got a question that I want to ask these guys because how many people have a favorite lure? Does anybody have a favorite lure in the audience? Absolutely. I think we all have certain lures that we like more than other. I want to hear what you're exactly, not just a spinner bait or whatever. I want to know the color, the size, the style, the brand. I want to know what each one of your guys' favorite lure is. And I'm going to be last. I'm going to start with Josh there.
Oh, no, Kevin. I think you should go first.
Yeah. No, I'm going to go last.
You're going last, yes.
So what I think is hilarious is if you walk down the aisles in the shop here, every single color of every single lure, there's someone that swears by that bait. And they have
Josh, we don't have all day. Just tell me your favorite bait and color.
Berkeley flatworm and green pumpkin color. They're actually in there on sale, and they're going to be hard to get the rest of the summer. So try to get them now if you can.
That's a hard one, too, like a dessert. What's your favorite dessert? My favorite bait is a Yamamoto Cinco green pumpkin purple green. All right, 2 packs for $5 in Bass Pro right now.
That's too much pressure. One. I'm always like, whatever they're biting, I don't care what I catch, and I just want to catch one. So anybody else feel the same way? Yeah, pretty much.
Come on, Skeet, we ain't got all day.
Yeah, I'm like you, Kevin. I can't make a. I'll go Berkeley Pit Boss. I can fish it in a lot of different ways.
What color?
Cream pumpkin.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Z-Man cross-size black and blue jig, 1/2 ounce with a Ninja Chunk trailer on the back of it.
David
Green
Walker,
pumpkin.
the jig man.
I'm going to have to go with a Maxent General Green Pumpkin weightless worm.
I got to go with a Strike King KVD 1.5 Sexy Shad.
Shocking.
There's a shocker.
Good answer. Good
Okay,
answer.
we got another question from the crowd. That's our favorite baits, guys.
What's your favorite lake in Missouri to fish in?
What's our favorite lake in Missouri to fish in?
That's an easy one for me. I spend a lot of time down here at Bass Pro Shops and do a lot of work. Obviously, I've been part of the company. I've been sponsored by Bass Pro Shops and Nitro Boats for my whole 32-year career, and it is Springfield, Missouri, so you go to Table Rock Lake.
Hey, great question. My favorite lake is Lake Stockton because it's where I caught my very first bass when I was a kid, about your age. It was a birthday gift, a guide trip, and I caught it on buzzbait at Lake Stockton, Missouri.
In Missouri.
Favorite Missouri lake, guys?
Table Rock. Table Rock for sure. I mean, it's a great lake.
All right, Josh, you got a favorite lake?
Table Rock.
Table Rock.
Yeah.
All right, so that being said, I got a question for you guys. Because I'm sure everybody around here, how many of you fish Table Rock? Bull shoals,
Thank you
yeah,
for the
for a lot
question.
of you. All right, so if you guys were going to go to Table Rock right now, how would you approach the lake to fish for this time of year?
Good question. I'll go. If I was to go down there right now, I would want to go on a day like today with a little bit of wind, and I'd tie me on like a Frittside HD brown crawl crankbait on 10-pound test, and I would try to fish rock transitions about halfway to 2/3 back in those creeks, and just go and go and go until I found some fish.
That's an easy one for me because I was on Table Rock Lake very recently this time of the year. I know the water conditions. We had some big rain yesterday, but my favorite bait right now down there is a Strike King 3XD in a crawfish pattern. I'm going to throw it on 10-pound test line, Bass Pro XPS fluorocarbon, so I can get the maximum depth out of it. And I'm going to fish main lake gravel points and secondary points with that flatter points. That's what these fish are staging on right now, moving up. And the beauty of Table Rock is it's the one lake where almost every day that I fish there, I'm going to catch a largemouth bass, a smallmouth bass,
awesome.
and a spotted bass. And there's not many places that you can do that. So,
And big ones.
you guys got any more? We got another question from the audience, too. Josh should be throwing a drop shot, I know.
You know it.
Do you have a sentimental lure that you love so much you'd go to get if it got snagged?
Do we have a sentimental lure that we love that's like our go-to lure?
A sentimental lure that's our go-to that we won't fish with? We couldn't quite hear you.
Like if it got snagged, you'd go swim to get it.
That we wouldn't want to lose. Do we have a sentimental lure that you would go swimming if it got snagged to get it back? Skeet?
Wow, I have had some of those, but I retired them because it was too stressful worrying about whether I was going to crack it, lose it. So typically, I know like any tournament I've ever won in my career, I've always just cut that lure off, and I pretty much hang it on the trophy at home, so I don't ever like, what if I'd lost that thing? So
I had actually had my favorite crankbait. I won the classic on, and I tried to keep fishing with it. 2 days later, for a media deal, and I hit it on the bridge, and I broke it in half, and I went and found it in the water floating, the part that broke off, and I got it back, and I've got it on top of my little trophy case right now. So you don't fish your favorite bait after it gets really good. Don't do that, because if you break it, it'll hurt your feelings.
did you cry?
So we are very sentimental about our baits. Very good question.
Thank you.
To me, the best ones got like hook marks chewed up all the way up and down. Half the paint's gone. That's a good one.
I've got a lot of those hanging at home too. You know, those ones that you look at that bait because it's got all those scratches on it from a bass eating it, and maybe the hooks are wearing some of the paint off the belly and things like that. When you look at it, it brings back those memories of those fish catches, and that's the great thing about fishing is just like we talked about our big bass and things like that. It's all about making those memories out there, and that's what we love to do. So we got another question from the audience here.
What is your favorite type of bait?
What is our favorite type of what?
Bait.
Bait. I'm going to answer that first because it's easy.
First off, what's our favorite type of bait? Not lure, favorite type of bait. Category.
Yeah, it was a topwater. It was easy. I was just going to say topwater.
Okay, there you go. Edwin loves topwater.
I can agree with Edwin on this. I mean, when it comes to tournaments, I'm going to fish jigs and soft plastics and chatterbaits. Love those. But for fun, topwater.
I'm just saying, if you said bait, and I'm thinking slow trolling about a 5 to 8 pound live skipjack and having about a 300-pound yellowfin tuna, smoke it.
We're in Missouri, buddy.
Oh, wait.
We don't live in California.
Hey, you asked me. That's where I went with it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I love topwater too, so I can't beat
top water.
topwater. Yeah.
I'm going to say soft baits here just because I've caught more fish on soft baits than anything else. So I like catching fish like Skeet said earlier, and they put fish in the boat.
My favorite bait has always been a spinnerbait. I've loved spinnerbaits. So I learned about throwing spinnerbaits from Jimmy Houston way back in the day, and I just love to feel that vibration and the way the bass bite it when you feel it, especially a smallmouth. That's nothing better than a spinnerbait, but a smallmouth bite on a spinnerbait to me is my favorite.
It's a cool bite.
Really good question. We got another question from the audience there?
What's your favorite boat to fish on?
What's our favorite boat to fish on?
Yeah, there's a loaded question there. I love that.
Josh, you want to go first?
Yeah, you know, a few of us up here, Nitro guys, and we've got actually the same boat we fish out of right in front of us. So it's the new Nitro Z21 XL. I'm in love with the boat. It's awesome in all ways.
Yeah, and I'm a Triton guy. I run a Triton bass boat for my whole career, almost 25 years now, and Triton XRT, 21 XRT, that's my new favorite boat.
Are you done? Oh, thanks. I'm going to go with the Ranger 520R. That is, I've been around the boating industry a long time, and I've been a lot of Rangers over the years. But that new 520R is it's the most impressive Ranger they've ever built. So performance, speed, fishability, it's a pretty amazing new machine. So I'm proud of them for bringing that kick. Bleep. I'll just shut up while I can.
Yeah, I'm running the 520R as well this year from Ranger. I've been running Ranger. I've had I was trying to count, I think I've had 28 or 29 Rangers now over the years. A few of those have been saltwater models as well, but once again, they managed to make their boat even better this year. I'm really impressed with that rig.
Mine's going to be a little bit different, guys. I got back into kayak fishing. That's really where I started, you know, when I was a kid, fishing in little bitty boats. And I started fishing out of the Ascend 133 kayak, me and my son, the last few years. And I just love it because I'm so close to the water. I'm amazed how many more times I can hear a bass feed and fight them. And I love fishing out of my kayak.
Well, I've got a Nitro Z21 XL as well, and you know, I love that boat, but you know, everybody likes to fish a little bit differently, and the beauty is here at Bass Pro Shops, we have something for everybody. So if you go over here to the large tent over here, we've got pretty much most of the models that we make in aluminum fishing boats, all the way to the fiberglass, the Nitros, the Tritons, the Rangers, and the Trackers all in one place.
You know,
and they're on sale.
Another great thing that you guys can do is go down to Big Cedar Lodge, and they've got a lot of those boats that you can rent. And so you can go try out all the different models down there at Big Cedar and catch some fish while you're down there on Table Rock.
Those Regency pontoons.
And Long Creek Marina as well. They have
Long
them there
Creek
as
Marina
well, too.
Yep.
So
Hey, those Regency pontoons are beautiful. How many of y'all like those big pontoons?
I've got a pontoon,
Yeah,
man.
that
I've got a
Regency
Regency.
over
I
there.
love that. Pontooning is a great way to be out on the water when you're not fishing.
Yeah, good song, too.
And you can fish off them. So
What size engine you got on that, Kevin?
I've got a Mercury 350 Verado on mine.
that's what I want,
You want to be able to
350.
move. So.
Yeah.
Now, I do a lot of pontooning up in Michigan on the Great Lakes, on Lake Michigan, and you got to be able to get off the water in a storm. And, you know, those boats are nice because I can carry about 15 of my best friends out there, and we can have a big time. And
Is that your excuse for having a 350? Just
Yeah, that's what he tells his wife. You got to have to get off the storms.
all bass fishermen like to go fast. So we got another
There's
question
the truth.
there?
There's the truth there.
Here we go.
What's your favorite fishing rod?
Favorite
What's our
fishing
favorite
rod?
fishing
I think
rod?
she's
Favorite
asking what our
fishing rod. That's-
favorite fishing rod. Go ahead, Kevin. Take it.
So I've been real fortunate to be able to work with companies over the years to develop a lot of my own fishing rods. So I love crankbaits. So I've got a Lew's KVD model Strike King series of crankbait rods. And I just really like those rods a lot. I love that technique, and those are the rods that I use. And again, they're all of this equipment you're going to be able to find here at Bass Pro. And I'm interested to see what they like. But my favorite one is a 7-foot medium action. That's the most versatile. That's the one that I use the most in my series.
If I had to choose one rod, and you only gave me one rod that I had to go fishing every day with, it'd be the 7-foot 1-inch medium heavy Johnny Morse Platinum. It's that red one in there. I can do a lot of things with it, and it's just my favorite rod by all means.
My favorite would be a G Loomis. It's a 894 FPR, which is a 7'5" flipping stick. Because if I had to fish with one bait and one rod, flipping and pitching a jig is going to be it.
I like it.
Did you pick a flipping stick?
He did.
Yes.
All right, go for you. I'm going to go with a 7-foot medium Reese fishing, black and yellow, surprising. But
Why
I'm
black
with
and
Kevin
yellow?
on that. Black and yellow, black and
Why
yellow.
black and yellow?
Why black and yellow? I don't know.
Do you think
Because
he
I
likes
look
black
at
and
it. It
yellow?
looks amazing.
Because it matches his
Anyways,
shirt.
but a 7-foot
And his
medium.
truck and his boat.
If you've ever questioned what the best all-around rod for you, and I'm with Kevin on that one, a 7-foot medium action allows you to be able to fish some worms, small jigs, crankbaits. There's a lot of things you can do with that rod right there.
Well, all of us thankfully have great sponsors with great rods. And they sell them all here in Bass Pro Shops. And I've got the Randy Howell Signature Series Tattoola Elite rods by Daiwa. They're the silver rods. And it's 5 different models, but like the guys all say, that's 7-footer. I've got a 7-foot medium jerk bait, crankbait rod, a shorter handle on it. It's a great little rod. You can do a lot of stuff with that.
Yeah, just like a lot of these guys, I like a similar size and action if I'm just going to have one. But, you know, I've been an Abu Garcia guy my whole life. I remember being a kid buying them used, you know, and now, you know, they've got a great lineup of rods, but probably the best all-around series that we've got is going to be the Veritas PLX. We've got them over here. Great deal right now, $79, so very affordable. And yeah, you know, if you need a spinning rod, a 7-foot medium is probably going to be your best all-around action for that. I use a 7-foot medium all the time.
So one of the great things that's going on here at the World's Fishing Fair as well, before we get to this next question, is we see these people running around with tickets. We are doing, or Bass Pro Shops is doing over $250,000 of giveaways over the course of the World's Fishing Fair here. We're giving away a lot of Bass Pro gift cards. So you can see there, if you want to put your tickets in the buckets, we're continually draw those all day long. So make sure you catch those people.
Somebody right now is going to win. We're going to draw a ticket out of that bucket, you know, at the end of this seminar.
At the end of our seminar,
so
we're going to draw for some Bass Pro
get you a
swag.
ticket so you can win something.
We got another question here.
Ticket.
What is your favorite fish you've caught?
That's a really good question.
Fish we've caught?
What is the favorite fish that you've ever caught? Your favorite personal fishing memory, favorite fish?
I'll go. I got to go tuna fishing a couple years ago up in northeast United States, actually in Canada off Prince Edward Island, and caught a 700-pound tuna in 100 foot of water. It was like completely amazing. So for me, that was my favorite because it's such a big fish.
I think one of my favorite fish ever to catch was a peacock bass. Kevin was there.
I got to do that trip, man. That was awesome.
Talk about fun. It's like a smallmouth on steroids. It is unbelievable.
What was it? Josh, you go.
Well, you know, maybe the most memorable fish that I've ever caught was, we've all caught a lot of memorable bass, but, you know, for me as a kid, I was probably 8, 9 years old, and this little town I used to live in New Hampshire, we had a kids fishing derby every year, and there was a pond half the size of this pool, and they would just dump a bunch of brook trout in it, and it was crazy because there were kids lined all around the pond, and they would say go, and everyone would throw their line in. 2/3 of them would get tangled, and then the last third would all catch a fish, right? And I ended up catching a 14-inch brook trout. It was the biggest fish probably that they put in the pond. I was lucky, and I won that derby, and I was hooked on fishing tournaments ever since. They look a lot different now, but that was probably the most memorable for me.
All you, Randy.
Oh, me. You know, it would be easy just to say the 12-pounder I caught in the tournament. That's a great one, but my memory is still when I was 12 years old, I caught a 10-pound, 8-ounce bass, and I caught it out of a little boat. It was called a Mercury Minnow. It was a little black plastic boat that before they had kayaks, they used to have this little boat, and we would drag it into ponds and into people's ponds that we didn't have permission to go in, and we would go into the woods. And I was joking. We really had permission. And I got in there and went in this ditch, and I cast my bait, and it was hanging over a cypress tree limb, and it was like way up off the water, and I was trying to shake it off, and this 10-pound, 8-ounce bass jumped like this high out of the water and got it off the tree limb, and I actually caught it, and it pulled my little boat all around the pond before I got it in. So that's still my best memory of my favorite fish.
All right, so I'm kind of with Edwin on the giant tuna thing. So fishing up in Canada, hand feeding and watching these 400 to 1,200-pound bluefin tuna feeding at the side of the boat and leaving a slick the size of the stage is unbelievable. So that was amazing, but I still go back. The single greatest fish catch for me ever, when I was 8 years old fishing in a raft with my dad, I caught my first bass ever. It was 10 inches long. Without that fish, I would not be on this stage right now talking to all of you.
That's right.
So mine is pretty similar to yours, Skeet. So my dad took me on a trip when I was 7 years old to northern Michigan to Lake Leelanau, and I caught my first smallmouth bass on a Zepco 33 with a live night crawler. It was 10 inches long, and it was everything I could do to get that thing in the boat. It stripped drag, it jumped, it fought, it did everything but break my line, and I finally caught it, and it made such an impression on me that smallmouth bass have been my favorite fish since that day, just because of how mean they are, and they just never give up. So we got another good question coming.
What is the craziest thing you've caught while fishing?
What is the craziest thing you've caught while fishing? So this is going to be a good one because there's a lot of experience on the stage. Josh, we'll start with you on the end again.
Well, I know I'm not the only guy that's caught a pair of underwear before, but we were fishing.
No.
We were fishing a classic at Grand Lake in 2016, and I was like right on the cut line. I'm stressing out. We got like an hour left in the day. There's a handful of boats in this pocket watching me fish. I'm throwing a jerkbait, and I finally get the bite I've been looking for. And I literally, typically when you catch something that's lifeless, it feels lifeless when you're reeling it in. But I swear this pair of underwear fought. And I fight it all the way to the boat, and I get up to the boat, and it's a gigantic pair of whitey tighties. And they weren't so white anymore, but it was, yeah.
That's why they're in the water.
It was, yeah, I guarantee that's why they were in the water. So it's pretty embarrassing, and here I am telling you all, but that was probably the weirdest thing I've caught. How about you, Randy?
Man, I tell you, we've caught so many crazy things. Probably cans. You know, how many of y'all ever caught a can, like a dog food can or something like that? I've fought several of them to the boat before, because a lot of times people that crappie fish, you know, punch holes in dog food cans and throw them in the brush piles to kind of in the water, and I've caught several of them before, so that's probably the craziest thing.
All right, so for me, I'm fishing Clear Lake, back in a canal, throwing a jerkbait. This a couple years ago, a long time ago actually. And I'm fishing that jerkbait, bop, bop, and I stop it, and I can see some bubbles on the ground. I'm like, oh, maybe that's a carp swimming. Pop, pop, and all of a sudden my line takes off. I'm like, oh, there it is. And I set the hook, and my line comes up. I'm like, oh, it's a good one. It jumps out of the water, and I see two eyes the size of, like, they look like big giant white jelly beans. It was about a 20-pound freshwater otter. He thought my big jerkbait was a fish. He tried to eat it. He jumped out of the water. It scared the ever-living bejesus out of me, because when you see big eyeballs and fangs, 4 legs and a tail, you're like, what in the heck did I just catch? And I fought it all the way up to the boat, and finally the hooks pulled out of it. I don't know. I was scared.
Yeah, I think over the years I've caught all kinds of crazy things. Caught turtles, caught snakes, caught birds, caught rocks. I mean, you name it. But I think a pelican was probably one of the oddest things that I caught. And I had to land the thing and unhook it, and I did, of course, take a selfie with him.
So this is an honest story. I'm fishing Kentucky Lake, and I'm throwing in this brush pile, and I've got like this big worm, and I'm throwing in this brush pile, and I'm kind of snagged. And like I snagged, and I'm trying to get it off, and then I pull on it really hard. Well, then I start reeling it in, and I've got a dead 2.5-pound bass hooked in the mouth that had swallowed something and broke off in that brush pile, but somehow I hooked it in the mouth, a dead one, like been dead for a while. And
what are the chances of that?
I called, like, man, can I weigh this one in? They're like,
Apparently pretty good.
No.
I've got a pretty embarrassing story, because I was fishing when I was, as a teenager, I was fishing the Federation Championship at Lake St. Clair in the St. Clair River. I was fishing with a spinning rod for smallmouth. I threw a tube up to a seawall, and the current's really fast. It's like 6, 7, 8 mile an hour current in this particular bend of the river, and to barely even hold the boat there, that tube went down. I got a bite. I set the hook, and I started fighting it, and I'm like, this is the biggest. I thought I had a world record smallmouth on. I mean, I would pull it up, and it would just pull me back down. I'd pull it up and pull me down. I fought this thing for like 10, 15 minutes. My partner in there is getting ready with the net, and we're sure that it's going to be a 7, 8, 9-pound smallmouth, just the biggest smallmouth ever. I finally worked my way and got it up to the boat, and the whole time it was a pipe wrench that was hooked in the middle with that tube, and every time I would pull it up, it would go back down and it would wobble, and I swear for sure that it was an 8 or 9-pound smallmouth. So that's very embarrassing that I spent 15 minutes fighting a pipe wrench.
That's a good one. I'm going to call you Pipe Wrench now. That was really good.
We got another question from the audience there.
What is your favorite season to fish in, and why?
What is our favorite season to fish and why? Somebody go with this one.
For me, it'd have to be springtime. Just everything's starting to green up. You know, we've all been dying to get out. Been winter, you know, we got cabin fever. You start hearing the frogs and the birds and all that stuff. And, you know, it's just that the bite of warming up in the spring. I love fishing April, May, you know, March. Just that springtime bite to me is the best time of the season.
I would agree with you, Edwin. I mean, I love the pre-spawn when these big fish are kind of coming off the winter. They've been feeding up. They're probably the heaviest they're going to be all year long, and they're hungry. You know, they're aggressive. So fishing for big spring pre-spawn, largemouth, it's the time of the year that you're going to catch that Randy Howell fish of a lifetime like that. And that's exactly what he did earlier this year. Is that fish was just one of the prettiest bass that I've ever seen as a complete specimen, just the health of that fish. And that's what you see in the spring.
Yeah, you know, I think the spring is probably most people's favorite, but that's probably one of the reasons it's not mine, because everybody's on the water. I'm more attuned to going in the wintertime because the parking is much better at that time.
Good point. Good point.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Winter? Did you say winter?
All these bad tournaments
Have you
with
not
ice.
fished on a tour lately? Because we fish winter at every
It's been the
event.
Arctic Tour and the Bass Pro Tour this season, so I'm going to go springtime. There's everything, yeah, the trees blossoming, grass turning green, everything's coming to life out there. It's just beautiful, and the fish are moving up. That's my hands down my favorite.
That's
time
why
of
the
year.
spring fishing fair is going on right now, because spring
so you're
is
not
the
all
best.
fishing right now. You're here.
That's right. And hey, and seeing a bass in clear water when they're coming on beds, seeing them swimming around, and actually watching them bite your bait. Like over in the bass tub earlier, there's a 9-pounder in there, and I had that fish come up and bite my wacky Cinco earlier, and I watched his big mouth close, and my heart was in my throat, and I couldn't catch it because I was in the tank doing a seminar. But that is so fun. You know, Skeet said, why? He would jerk.
Come on, Bertrand.
I'm going to go ahead and vote for the summer, just because the fishing is consistent, right? You can get out there in shorts, and it's kind of the same bite every day, where it's like, I love fishing in the spring, but it can be hard to stay on those fish as it's changing a lot, and I'll have a frustrating day in the spring here and there, so I like the summer.
Jeff, are we ready to do a drawing yet?
We are ready to do a drawing, but before we do that, hey, let's give it up one more time for these pros.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys so much.